Hi, it's Carla from Creative Love Affair, and I'm here today with the Emerald Creek Craft Supplies blog. Our theme this month is beach, and so I've created a beachy layout from a camping trip we took last summer, and I'm using a sketch from the Scrapbook and Cards Today magazine and some of the amazing powders in the Emerald Creek shop, which I will link to below. So I'm starting out with a stencil and an ivory piece of cardstock from Canvas Corp, and I've grabbed some distress inks, and I'm just using this dilution stencil to create a kind of a stone look in the background. And I have a little bit of purple and pinks in my photos that I'm using, so I'm kind of grabbing some purples and gray, and I really end up liking this color combination. So I'm just doing around the outside edge of the cardstock because I'm going to layer a piece of paper right in the center, and this looks really nice with those colors together. And then I grabbed a piece of Canvas Corp blue ticking stripe paper, and I'm going to add this beautiful baked texture embossing powder around the edge, and this is the deep sea. I'm using some Versamark ink just to smudge it around the edge of my paper, and then I'm adding the embossing powder right to the edge. This is a beautiful deep navy blue that has flecks of white in it. It melts beautifully and just gives a really lovely edge all around the edge with some texture as well. So I usually start off by putting that embossing powder on a piece of paper and just funneling it back in, and then I emboss underneath at first just so my powder doesn't fly around, and then on the top, and you can see how beautifully that melted and give it a really neat edge. Now I've grabbed some Bow Bunny stamps from my stash. They're kind of just some neat background stamps, and I'm adding that onto the bottom, and I end up putting some on the side, and I'm using some Dirty Sand embossing powder, and this is some of that beautiful baked texture powder again that is new, and it was released with Seth Apter and Emerald Creek. Now this melts to a really beautiful texture, and it actually looks like sand, and it has a little bit of a shine to it. Now I'm taking a mistable paper from Tattered Angels. It's called the Mini Origins, and I'm using some Tattered Angels glimmer mists, and I'm just misting around the edges of this paper. It's really cool. It almost feels like a fabric. It just has such a neat weight to it, and you can spray on it and ink it, and you can stitch on it, and I actually do add some stitching around the outside of it. And I just dried that with my heat gun, and then I'm adding a little more of the Dirty Sand embossing powder to the bottom of it. Well, what I think is the bottom, but then I paid attention to the pattern and realized those were little mermaids in that pattern, so I end up putting the sand stamped embossed area at the top, and I will add a little bit more embossing at the bottom. So I'm grabbing the Weathered Wood embossing powder. This is another one of my favorites. It has different browns in it and flecks of white, and it really looks like a weathered white look. So this stamp is neat. It looks like some corrugated cardboard, and just looks so cool layered over top of this beach themed paper from Tattered Angels. So after that's completed and I had sewed around the edges, I've grabbed some Wild Whisper paper with the stones in it, and I cut a circle from some Canvas Corp sand and sea craft paper, and I layered those on, and then I add some more embossing powder, the patina oxide in the baked texture, and I add that to a square cut out from Wild Whisper papers that came in a pack with the stone paper. So it's kind of a beachy mermaid theme. Now I cut some circles out of some more Canvas Corp beach paper, and I added some patina oxide embossing powder around the edges of that, and then I'm just using some of that dirty sand, and I'm embossing some cut out seashells that are cut from a free cut file from Scrapbook and Cards Today, their blog, and you can download those for free. So I used the background of the shells, which were embossed with that dirty sand, and then I'm going to emboss the front part with patina oxide. And I actually, to the little sand dollar there, I was going to add some glue and let the dirty sand just dry on it, because you can use that dry as well as a beautiful embellishment, but I just couldn't, I decided I didn't want to wait for it to dry. So I ended up drying that with the heat gun. So here you can see that sand dollar there, and I really love the way these powders emboss. You can layer them if you want a thicker look, and I'm just going over this again. They have a bit of a shine to them, so you have a little bit of some glimmery shading there, and this patina oxide, like I said, over the edges of the die cut shells is so beautiful. It has blues and a little bit of gold, and the sand dollar ended up turning out really neat here and really textured with the glue underneath, which I think sometimes it's just really cool to just experiment with things and see how they turn out. So I added that Wild Whisper mermaid, and now I'm just adding a little bit of papers around the edge to layer my photo. This was a 3x4 photo that I printed, and I used the Project Life app to print these photos and just do 2 3x4s side by side. And then I'm just cutting out some papers around the edges to give it a layered look, and cutting out just kind of what I need so that I'm saving paper and using up some of my scraps there. So this picture of my husband and I were sitting on the beach, and it was nice just to be able to sit down and relax for once, for a few minutes anyways. So my title is part of that cut file from the Scrapbook and Cards Today magazine, and I just cut that out of some Wild Whisper paper, and I'm gluing that directly onto the Canvas Corp paper that has the lighthouse on it. And I think even though this was at the lake and we were camping, you can still use seashells and nautical themed accessories, because you're by the water, and I think you just can have fun with it. So I used some glue dots to add that little sand dollar, because it was a little bit bumpy from having some glue and being heated, but that's okay. I like the texture on it. And then I just use my tacky glue and glue down my embellishments after I kind of figure out where I want them, and I think the embossing powder just gives it such neat texture and dimension and color, and just adds to that whole beach theme. So I really had fun with this. I added some journaling, and I popped on one of the Emerald Creek metal camera embellishments. You'll see that in a minute there. I just used some glue dots and some matte medium. Then I took some of the snarky phrases from the Tim Holtz book, which are totally hilarious, and I added those onto my layout. I didn't add anything too snarky, but I just thought they were cute, and I love to be able to use these little bits of typed journaling, which are neat. And then one of the sentiments just comes from one of the Tim Holtz Chit Chat books, which is the similar journaling. And I liked the quotes about relaxing and just being on vacation. So I hope that you maybe got some ideas on how to add embossing powder to your layouts, and just have fun kind of layering and enjoying the process, and remembering those trips that you went on. If you have some beach projects you would like to share, we would love to see them. I will link below so you can see how to share those with us. And I hope you'll stop on over to the Emerald Creek Craft Supplies shop and just see what fun things you can find in the shop. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'd love for you to like and subscribe.